Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Number 2, thank you so much for being with us. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and now it is time for Conservative Future, which is always one of my favorite segments. And I want to welcome to the program, we have Mr. Andrew Reno is with us. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for inviting me to come on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, you work for Americans for Prosperity Arkansas as a field director, correct?
I do. I handle Arkansas Americans for Prosperity for all of Congressional District 1.
Okay. Wow, that's a big job.
It's not small, no, but I love every minute of it.
Good. That's good to hear. So how old are you, Andrew?
I'm 26.
26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So we do these segments, I'm sure you know, because I know you listen to the podcast, you're telling me. We try to get young conservatives to kind of show older Republicans or conservatives, that there are young people who are involved, and it's kind of the idea of the future. So I'm glad that you were willing to come on the program. And so just kind of tell us a little bit. We know where you are now, but tell us how you got here. How did you become a conservative?
Right. Well, it's an interesting story. I don't think anyone that works in politics really thought at the beginning, whenever they're figuring out their life, figuring out their career, that they would end up there. It's more of a calling you fall into. I grew up in a conservative household, as many people do in Northeast Arkansas. My grandparents moved here in the 60s from Maryland as Democrats, but then they realized there was only one party in the state of Arkansas, and they thought that was unhealthy, so they changed to be Republicans just to kind of stick it to the man a little bit. And I grew up listening to Fox News at high decibel volumes, filling the entire house.
That's the second Conservative Future in a row where somebody has mentioned Fox News. Continue. Sorry.
Well, it was omnipresent in my house. I would listen, at 9 p.m. in my bed to Bill O'Reilly, as clear as if it was playing in my room, because my poor grandparents had to turn the volume up so loud. So, and then my grandfather would listen to Rush Limbaugh, picking me up from school and that kind of thing. I was always interested in history, and I was interested in, why do things happen? Not just the what, but what was going on behind the scenes. And so as I got through college, I wanted to major in history, but everyone said, don't major in history. You can't do anything with it unless you want to be a researcher. And those jobs are hard to come by. You go to business school. And so that's what I did. I studied marketing management at Arkansas State University, and I got involved with college Republicans there. My good friend Dean Marks, he's also our Central Arkansas director now for AFP. He was the chairman of the college Republicans at the time, and he recruited me. And so we started helping out Congressman Crawford on his 2012 race, and I fell in love with it. It was just, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. I like my business classes. I love business school. But you're not dealing with something that you feel like has real weight oftentimes. You're just moving products from point A to point B, which is fantastic. But I want to do something with my life that is a little more engaged. It's a little more weight, and you can see the impact with other people. So as I got through college, I ended up volunteering for Americans for Prosperity. And that led into a part-time job my senior year. And I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of success with college students at Arkansas State, getting them involved in the Americans for Prosperity field program, knocking on doors, making phone calls about policies. And, I've worked for both candidates and nonprofits. And when you work for a nonprofit that does policy as opposed to working for a person.
Like education efforts,
working on healthcare reform, working on tax cuts, that kind of thing. You might lose a fight, but the policy didn't let you down. You can just get back up and go at it again. Unfortunately, if you work for a candidate, and I've worked for all kinds of candidates, some have turned out well, some have turned out not so well after they get in office. But you're taking that risk. You're putting your hard work, and campaigns are hard work. And I would much rather work for an organization that promotes policy as opposed to somebody's personal agenda. So that being said, I fell in love with AFP. But when I graduated, they didn't have a full-time opening for me. And so I hopped on board with the Republican Party of Arkansas, and I was the field manager for all of Northeast Arkansas for the RPA. and I worked specifically with Governor Hutchinson's campaign some. And then other general, whatever needed to be done, I was the gopher for this part of the state, and I really enjoyed it. And I got to the end of the campaign, and I was tired. You know, you're working long hours for, you know, low pay. Your first year in campaigns, it's always a learning curve. And that election night ended, and it was a good election night. I think we won every single race that I was involved with helping. Very happy night. But, you know, I swore I'm never going to do this again. I'm going to go. I'm going to try my business degree out. I'm going to do something else. And my buddy Matt Hudgens, who was the other field director for Northeast Arkansas, said, "Hey man, give it 3 months and you'll be back. Let it wear off. You know, get your rest, and you're going to be so bored in your next job, you're going to be back in it, because it really is something that's meaningful." And he was right. I went and worked at Hewlett Packard in Conway for about 6-7 months, and it was sales. It was, you know, just dialing phones and making sales, but it didn't really have any meaning. It didn't have anything to it that, you know, had weight. And so the first chance AFP had with with an opening here in Jonesboro, I took it and moved back home. We're
talking with Andrew Reno. He's the now Americans for Prosperity field director. So tell us a little bit about, you know, what, you know, you mentioned something interesting. It's better to work for somebody where you're advocating the policy,
right? Because
even if you lose on an issue, that policy you still believe in,
right?
Okay, versus the candidate, which may, once you get in office, let you down. So talk if you can elaborate on that at all. I mean, have you seen that? Have you seen that firsthand, or you know, it's just what you prefer? Because it seems like a campaign would be maybe more exciting, because you do have the personality involved, versus the policy and that sort of thing.
Well, it really depends on what policy you pick. Now, if you're working on a really boring policy, then it's going to be a boring campaign for the policy to be implemented. And you know, it really depends. You know, I think we can look at the voting records of everyone that we've sent to Little Rock and see who really stood by the party platform and who didn't. At AFP, we don't endorse people and we don't get into specifics. And so I would say voting. Just look at your representatives' voting records and say, hey, you know, I put you into office to go down to Little Rock or to go to D.C. and to do a job. And if no one knows, you know, if you don't really check and see how your representative is voting, and you're not calling his office and you're not showing up at events to let them know how you feel, well, your voice isn't being heard. You just cast a ballot.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Okay, so Andrew, what when we say conservatism, I mean, what does that even mean now? You know, or limited government? You know, what do those things mean to you? Just you personally, like what are some of your bigger issues?
I am a big believer in the old axiom, if you give a man a fish, he can have a fish for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he can fish for his entire lifetime. And so
until he gets sick and needs free health care.
Until he gets right. Thank you. You don't want to eat an unhealthy fish for sure. But what fires me up about what I do is a story that I read when I was getting ready to interview at Americans for Prosperity. I read a book called The Conservative Heart by Arthur Brooks. And if you're listening to this program and you haven't read it, you should probably go to Barnes & Noble right now and go buy it. There's a story, and I'll make the story very short, about a young person that was involved with drugs through his 20s and was really down on his luck and all over the country, going from city to city, down and out. And he got to New York City and got arrested for drug use. And he was put in jail, and there's all these programs when he was about to be released that would come and say, hey, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that. They wanted him for grant money, they wanted him for this or that, and so everything was kind of free. Come to our rehab, we'll give you this, this, and this. But one program in particular, one foundation in particular, said, no, we're not going to give you anything for free. Why don't you come with us and we'll show you how to work? And so he went to this foundation. And the punishment for relapse, or the punishment for having a bad day in rehabilitation, wasn't that they'd kick you out. It wasn't that they took away your benefits. First, they gave you a job, cleaning the streets. And if you messed up and you had a bad day, they would say you can't go to work today. So when all your friends are going to work and you're staying in the dorm,
wow,
that's the shame of that is what kept people involved. And then eventually they give you technical training and you graduate. Fast forward a couple years, and Arthur is interviewing this guy, and he says, son, what's the one thing that you're most proud of through all of this? You're successful now. He's working for a pest control company. What's the thing that gets you excited? And this guy pulled out his phone, and it was a brand new phone, whatever kind of phone it was. And Arthur said, hey, I thought he was going to say, I can now buy this phone with my money. Hey, that's free market success right there. That's great. But instead, he opened up his email and he started crying. And he showed Arthur an email that at 2 a.m. they had emailed him and asked him to take care of a problem. They didn't email anyone else. They couldn't trust anyone else to do it. His boss emailed at him at 2 a.m. and said, please come in. This is an immediate need. And he said, that is what earned success is. That is being at the lowest of the lows and learning how to earn success and enjoy that value. And when I heard that story on the plane to D.C. to interview at Americans for Prosperity, I realized that's what I want to do. That I'm in the right place. I'm going to the right interview. Because if I can spread that message of earned success, and my own personal backstory, being raised by my grandparents and my mom, and them teaching me those values. And first job was on a horse ranch when I was 16. Cleaning up after horses and doing back-breaking work, mending fences and things like that.
Yeah.
But the joy it gives you when you get that first paycheck.
So this guy was just so taken back that where he was versus where he's now. People are trusting me to do something that is valuable to them.
Absolutely.
At 2 in the morning.
At 2 in the morning.
And how many people would just be like, I don't want to get called at 2 in the morning to do anything.
Right.
It's a completely different perspective and appreciation of what you have. Absolutely.
And and we can talk about a lot of our entitlement spending. A lot of it is well intentioned. A lot of it, LBJ sat down with that man, the famous pitcher, before he announced the war on poverty, and this guy told him his life story, how he was stuck, he couldn't get a job, there was no employment around him, and LBJ was so moved that he started the war on poverty to help this guy out. But I saw a Facebook article where this guy, they tracked him down, and he died a few years ago. And he was living in the exact same situation he was, trillions of dollars later in government spending, and it didn't help him any. Mm-hmm. So when we look at these policies, we don't necessarily need to start pointing fingers and saying, you're trying to destroy America with these policies. What we need to say is, hey, the way we're doing it isn't working, guys.
You have destroyed America.
Right.
With these policies. Let's start there.
Right.
Oh, that's great. Well, Andrew Reno, it's been a pleasure to have you on, man. I appreciate it. And it looks like the future is bright, and I appreciate your perspective. That's a great story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think that's what we're all headed is, recognizing the value of work. And, for me, it comes back to, if you are one of these people that don't want to work, what can the government do to change your mind? And and that's a very difficult question to answer. And I think we have results to say not a lot.
Not a lot. And it's about us taking responsibility for our communities. If you're a conservative and if you're a Christian and if you believe in helping other people and you're not doing it, well, I mean, can you blame people for taking government assistance if your church isn't helping them? If you're not helping them?
Yeah.
And so, if we're going to tackle some of these big spending issues and we yank these programs out of people that have been on them for 4 generations, are we going to be there as conservatives and as brothers to say, hey, let's give a helping hand and take care of these people ourselves and give them training and be in their communities and teach classes?
Yeah. And when that charity, and this is the thing, when the government is the charity, there is no, there's just not a significant way to monitor what you're getting for your money. But if you as an individual are saying, hey, I'm going to help this person out, if they have, because poverty is more than just monetary. There's behavioral aspects to it
Absolutely.
As well, habitual behavior. And so if you're personally doing this, and then that person is just continuing to, act in poorly but expect better results, you get to a point where you maybe withdraw the resources, or you say, hey, I'm not going to, I don't think you're doing this right.
Right.
You're hands-on. You're there to say, well, maybe you shouldn't be, spending your money on this or that, and maybe instead you should, do something else.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
so general. It could be anything. But anyway, Andrew, I appreciate it, sir. Andrew
Paul,
Reno.
thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, that wraps up another edition, second week in a row of our Conservative Future segment. We appreciate Andrew being on. We appreciate you listening. We'll see you in just a minute. Don't go anywhere.